This episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show is brought to you by CedarStream. For branded apparel, stickers, signs, and banners, visit cedarstream.com. We're joined this week by Ryan Lapete of DEEP Brewing. Ryan left a career as a deep sea diver to open his brewery in Tallahassee, Florida. He shares how his diving experience helps his brewing, how winning Rate Beer's Best New Florida Brewery impacted his business, and news on a whole season of coffee beer releases. We hope you enjoy.
Open up a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yeah, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
And welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We are radio for the local craft beer movement. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio Studios at Ironmonger Brewing in Marietta, Georgia. I'm Tim Dennis.
And I'm Brian Hewitt. This week we're talking with Ryan Lapete from Tallahassee, Florida's DEEP Brewing Company. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Ryan, how are things down in Tallahassee today?
Warm.
Warm? Yes. No, it's fall. That can't be true. I know
it can't be.
It's a very brisk, like 55 degrees here in Atlanta. So that's
nice.
A lot.
Yeah, we hit, I think we hit 94 outside and probably about 86 in the back of the brewery.
Of course, yeah.
So
I saw some people in Canada were posting their pictures of the last day of summer, and they're already getting some snow in certain parts there. And it didn't even register with me that we were in fall yet because it's still 90 degrees out.
It's still hitting that, but we have had more thunderstorms. So I think that's the big transitional thing where it turns gray and just dumps.
Instead
crazily.
of just being hot, it's hot and stormy.
Yes, hot and stormy.
All right. Ryan, any interesting beers for you this week? Anything interesting events?
So we are about to enter, as in our celebration of fall, we've got a couple of German beers coming on. We've got our Deeptoberfest fest beer, as well as a Kolsch and a Pilsner. And then we're about to transition into our coffee beer season. So we do a whole line of about 6 different coffee beers.
That sounds like the most wonderful time of the year.
It really does.
Yeah, I'm all about some coffee beers. So, Brian, we had a busy week this week.
Indeed.
So a little road tripping.
Yes.
A little checking things out. So we are on a quest to visit every brewery in the state of Georgia in 2018, and we're doing pretty good. We're doing quite well. I think the remaining breweries we kind of have to do a little travel to the fringes of the state. But I personally have 63. I think we both have 63 in, but we're missing a couple of what each other has.
Yeah,
right?
I have a few that you don't have, and you have a few that I don't have. And I think I did the math, and I think we're technically slightly ahead of schedule. Like if we per the numbers.
Okay, running
so
the stats.
Yeah, the stats.
Okay.
I don't have them in front of me, but we're doing all right as of today.
But we knocked a few off last week, and we went down to Macon, Georgia, Middle Georgia, and we met up with a friend that we know from online and from Beer Festival, another Brian. And you guys planned an all Brian bottle share.
That's right. And I think it's only going to be Brian's that have I's in the name, in the spelling, no Y's.
No Y Brian's. That's understandable. Absolutely.
They can petition to be included.
Okay.
And, maybe we'll let them in.
But we hit 3 breweries down there. We went to Piedmont Brewery and Kitchen. We went to Ocmulgee Brew Pub, and we went to Macon Beer Company down there. So checked out that's the full Macon beer scene. Macon's not a huge town, but they got a few breweries that are growing there. They have at least triple the amount of breweries they had like a year and a half ago. So it's a start. But we're doing pretty good. It's a fun mission that we're on there.
It is. I'm glad we're doing it.
What was your favorite in Macon?
My favorite in Macon, that's a tough one. I was thinking I really like that smoke signal at Ocmulgee, the smoky stout, but there were some very West Coasty IPAs at Piedmont Brewery and Kitchen, and I think, boy, it's a tough one. It's between us and them, the IPL that they collaborated on with Atlanta Brewing Company, or possibly the Sunshine Daydream Tropical IPA that was also very West Coasty.
We were very much in disagreement on our favorites at Piedmont.
Yes.
Because the Saison they had there, I thought was fantastic. Really bright and crisp. And to put it lightly, you did not think it was fantastic.
Yeah, I was getting stuff out of it that you weren't tasting. So, yes, differences in palates, I think. So
I mean, maybe your palate will get refined the more you drink, and you'll be able to get.
Or maybe you'll
those.
wake up eventually,
Yes, right.
Tim. We can always pray.
Right. But then on the way back, we hit Atlanta
Yeah.
Brewing Company. They did a beer release there, so we checked that out, and that was pretty fun.
That was fun. That Kentucky Beer Dad, I love that. And I also got Whale Sharknado. I had to get it for the name.
Sharknado.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
That's
Good
right.
stuff.
That was good stuff.
And then the crew got together this week for an event at Terrapin ATL Brew Lab at SunTrust Park. So, and that's a cool setup they got there. Sam, we finally got Sam out there, who doesn't get out to as many events with us, but he hit it up. But the way the park's set up, if you haven't been to SunTrust Park in Atlanta, it's in a complex called the Battery, or I guess the complex outside of the park is called the Battery. But a lot of shops, restaurants, and that. But they got a very cool open green space there, and they had a little concert, a little small amphitheater, some AstroTurf to run around on, a really nice restaurant. So just a cool venue to hang out, drink beers, and listen to a concert.
So, Tim, I think it might be time for Truck and Tap's Beers of the Week.
Crack open a cold one. It's the Truck and Tap Beer of the Week. Woo-hoo! Craft beer and food trucks in downtown Woodstock. Truckandtap.com.
Well, as always, Brian, we have a nice list to choose from here. So we've got, unfortunately, we don't have any DEEP Brewing beers, but we're going to have to come down to Tallahassee and visit you and drink through all your taps down there.
Be a good road trip, that's for sure.
It does,
yes.
Man. We'll definitely have to do that. So we do have a few, though, to quench our thirst here. We started pre-gaming with one from Creature Comforts called Context and Memory, a new one from them, a Pale Ale. We all really enjoyed this. Some nice citrusy, lemony, grassy notes in it. Yes. Mosaic, Citra, and Galaxy hops. Brian, you have one that I know you're looking for. You have the Cherry Duchess.
Yes, the Cherry Duchess. Yeah.
So I know you're a big fan. Have you had the cherry yet?
I haven't yet. I meant to, but I haven't had it yet.
So we'll get into that. We also have Maine Beer Company just made its way to Georgia, so we're going to get into their lunch IPA. And we also have Brewery Girl Grey and Earl Grey tea beer. So we'll have to see how that goes. And something I want to let our listeners know, Brian, our first collaboration brew will be releasing soon.
Yes.
So on October 6th, we're doing a sneak peek. We brewed a collaboration beer with Reformation Brewery up in Woodstock, Georgia. We did a Berliner Weiss with yuzu and strawberry. And it will be on draft. The October 6th is their grand opening of their downtown Woodstock location. It'll be a sneak peek there on draft. And we're targeting November 2nd, not set in stone yet, but I believe November 2nd, we're going to do a can release of that beer in 16-ounce cans. So
love them
mark
16
your
ounces.
calendars, everybody. Come up and see us. We'll be there. We'll be giving out some swag. We'll be releasing a sneak peek of our first collaboration beer.
It's going to be exciting, too.
It is, yes. So, Brian, what's happening this week in the news?
What's in the news? The beer guys have the scoop.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
Time for headlines.
Okay, so in case you haven't heard, the Great American Beer Festival competition winners have been announced. And if you were expecting to hear familiar names taking home the awards for the new hazy styles, you're in for a surprise. So Juicy and Hazy IPA gold, silver, and bronze medals went to Alarmist Brewing in Chicago, Crow Strain Brewing in La Vista, Nebraska, and Eris Brewery, in Chicago. For the Juicy Hazy double IPA, also very popular, gold, silver, and bronze went to Black Market Brewing in Temecula, California, Corridor Brewing in Chicago, and Alvarado Street Brewery in Salinas, California. It's interesting that in none of these categories did we see any New England breweries come away with any awards. Another interesting thing, Tim, the winningest brewery in the competition was Bend, Oregon's 10 Barrel Brewing, a brewery owned by AB InBev.
That's just ridiculous.
And we had some Georgia breweries on the list. We had Orpheus. They got bronze for I Am Only Memories, their Belgian-style lambic and sour, which I'm in love with. Coastal Empire got silver for Coco Pina Goza, and Printer's Ale got bronze for Red Devil, a Belgian-style ale. In perplexing news, the European Patent Office has granted patents to Heineken and Carlsberg for ordinary barley and the process of brewing beer. This apparently somehow skirts EU laws that have been set up against patenting things like barley and tomatoes and things like that. And though it is thought this will stifle innovation and grain development, somehow it's continuing ahead. And of course, Big Beer will undoubtedly find new ways of unfairly leveraging those phony patents to damage independent beer, which I'm kind of envisioning royalties paid at every step of the brewing process. So that should be amazing.
You know, there's a little mixed information on that, Brian, because I did a little more research after you and I talked about it, and I still need to study more, but someone's telling me these are GMO strains of barley that they actually did R&D on, and these are, in fact, GMO strains that they produced. So that kind of changes the whole game to me, in my opinion. It's
Potentially, yeah.
It's not like they just patented regular barley, but they patented something that improves the brewing process. And that, I don't know if that's the fact. Like I said, the news article that we originally saw definitely made it sound like they just
for sure.
patented regular barley.
Yeah, it's actually a petition up on wemove.eu. It's a petition to rescind the patents that have been granted. And if you dislike these patents, go sign it.
You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. It is time for us to take a break. We'll be back in just a minute to talk with Ryan Lapete from DEEP Brewing Company.
Looking for a great way to promote your business? CedarStream has what you need. For apparel, stickers, signs, and banners, we're your one-stop shop. There are never any art fees or setup fees. And if you need your items quickly, there's no additional charge for rush orders. Whether you own a brewery, bar, bottle shop, or other business, CedarStream is ready to serve you. Visit cedarstream.com for more info or call 800-686-7488 for immediate assistance. CedarStream. We print America.
It's Brian and Tim, the Beer Guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Brian. They've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, that's where it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks, so you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth.
Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the Beer Guys sent you.
The Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I didn't enjoy it at all.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. For more great craft beer info, visit us on the web at beerguysradio.com. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio studios at Ironmonger Brewing, and we're talking with Ryan Lapete from DEEP Brewing Company.
Ryan, thanks again for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, Ryan, you are the founder as well as brewmaster for DEEP Brewing, correct?
I say I'm the owner, head brewer, and director of janitorial services.
That's we know a lot of those guys. It seems to be a common position when you're starting a brewery there, right?
Oh, yeah.
So one thing we want to start off with, we've talked to guys that came from all walks of life, pre-beer, pre-brewery, a lot of attorneys, interestingly,
Yes.
a lot of engineers, which makes sense.
Dentists
moving
even.
into that. Dentist, a couple of dentists, right? But you probably have the most interesting and definitely the most unique. So prior to opening your brewery, you were a deep sea diver and actually studied underwater crime scene investigation. Is that correct?
So, my most of my training in college was underwater crime scene investigation, and then I got recruited out of college while I was running recreational dive boats and stuff to work my way through school. Got recruited out of college to go down to the Keys and run a research facility down there for about 8 years, and so did a lot of more commercial diving research style stuff. We ran a saturation diving facility.
That's interesting. I think I saw somewhere that you spent a lot of time, like all day for days on end underwater. Is that right? Like, is it a month or something you lived underwater? Is that correct? Like in some facility somewhere?
Yeah, the nature of the program was for like long-term in situ research on the marine environment. We also did extreme environment training for NASA and for the Navy. And we did one project, which was our longest deployment, was a 31-day mission with Jacques Cousteau's grandson, Fabien Cousteau.
Wow.
How about that?
Very cool. So is owning a brewery now pretty boring in comparison?
I don't know. Everything is about the learning curve, so
right.
As long as we're constantly experiencing new things and have another hurdle to climb, then I think we're down the right path.
On that note, Ryan, we've noticed that just about any career you have, if you change careers, you always bring something from your previous career that you can apply in your new one and helps you with specific issues in that. Is there anything specifically that all your dive experience helps you with more than, say, it would anyone else being a brewery owner?
I think just from the diving side, you have a lot of knowledge on fluids, temperatures, dissolved gases, just the physics of the way the world works, especially when you're dealing with liquid. And then from the engineering side, working in a complex commercial dive setting, it's all about pipe fittings and welding and pressures and moving gases and running engines and motors and compressors. So all of that stuff, as well as there are only 12 guys on the crew, so all of us had to wear multiple hats. So I was an IT guy, electrician, engine repair guy. So you name it, doing fiberglass work. So all that kind of stuff informs everything inside the brewery. And it was kind of a nice, can unplug from one career and take that whole skill set and go into a new one.
So that actually sounds more ideal, a precursor to brewing than I thought it would be. How did you get from there to brewing? What took you there?
Got drunk at a Christmas party with some friends, and
so many stories start that way.
A lot of them not good.
Yeah.
So we were hanging out, and a couple of my cousins had just got back from Germany, and we're like, hey, your work's slowing down a little bit. You're going to have plenty of time on your hands. Why don't we start a brewery? And so I picked up the brewing side, and they were investors and bankers and that kind of thing. So over the course of about a year of planning and figuring it out, we kind of nailed the beer thing and started learning more about the business side. And then when it came time to put money on the table, everyone scattered, and then it was just me and the wife standing. So
that's typical.
Yeah. So now Deep Brewing, you guys just celebrated your second anniversary, so a little newer on the Florida beer scene, but it sounds like it's been a pretty busy couple of years for you. How have things gone there your first 2 years?
Pretty good. We were voted Rate Beer Best New Brewery in Florida for 2017. And over the course of the first 2 years, we've released somewhere around 220-ish beers. And we sell probably about 60% of that in the tasting room here. We started distributing here locally in Leon County in May of 2017, and just been kind of rocketing ever since.
So you mentioned the Rate Beer. First of all, congratulations. That's awesome for especially a state the size of Florida and a big competitive market there. It's really cool to win that. Absolutely. So
sure.
Did you notice, did that, when that was announced, did that make any changes for your brewery?
I think it was a little bit of an affirmation of everything we'd kind of been working on. And then we did get a lot of traction here locally, just kind of people. The Democrat, our local paper, had run a story about it, and a lot of people in town, even that hadn't heard of us, apparently we were right in their backyard. So they came in, check us out just because of that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that, we're embedded in the beer scene. So if a new brewery's coming, we know about it a year before it opens. But there's a lot of people who are fairly regular drinkers that just may not run into someone, may not know about a brewery. There's some that have been here a few years that are popular, and we still find a lot of people that are discovering them, which good for them. Always nice to discover a new brewery.
I was gonna say, heck, our sound engineer hasn't been to some of them. That
we'll get you there,
to.
Sam. We'll make it around. We'll make it around.
So you just started canning beer recently, right? That's a new thing for you, isn't it?
We did. We had our first canning run on, August 15th? And we launched the cans after a short QC hold just to make sure we had done everything well. We launched the cans for our second anniversary right at the end of the month. And now we're just trying to keep up with that.
So before that, was everything on draft, or did you also do some bottles as precursors to the cans?
Before that, we had only released one large format bottle. It was a high gravity Belgian triple, our Holy Spirit.
Oh yes, this is spelled spear as in the fish spear. Yeah,
right.
Cool. Now with that, selling as much as you do from your tap room, obviously I was going to say, how'd that work out for you? But obviously it's worked out well. But what are the benefits besides financial of selling the bulk through your tap room as opposed to distribution?
I think on top of the fact that that's where the profit is, and that's the lifeblood of the brewery. It's also kind of a way for people to come in and be like saturated with our brand. Everything from the way we organize the space, the art we have on the walls, the people we have behind the bar, and the way they describe the beer that they get to drink every day. And then on top of that, the way our tasting room's set up, we're only open 3 days a week, just because of our production schedule. So when people come in on Friday, we've cleaned up the place. We've got tables sitting inside the brew space. And so you're almost sitting within, you can almost hear the yeast working on the other side of the stainless steel.
Is that the chirping I hear?
Listen close. Yeah.
So it's just a great way for people to experience what we're doing. And as small as we are right now, that's the best way to hear about us and learn about what we're doing.
We've talked about a lot with Georgia breweries recently, but in 2017, we just got the right to do direct sales here from our breweries. And so right after that passed, we had a few breweries that announced plans to open to be an own premise brewery. So we're going to see, we could have a little game changing happening here in Georgia soon with that, without the need, not just desire, but a need to distribute to make any money. It'd be interesting to see how it works out, Brian.
It definitely will be. And I think that some people will be able to make a go of it with those direct sales that couldn't do it through distribution.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back very soon with more from DEEP Brewing Company.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
We are Reformation Brewery, celebrating the reformer in you. Locally crafted within the renowned Etowah watershed of Woodstock, Georgia, Reformation creates yeast-forward brews full of aroma and flavor crafted to last. Come see us in beautiful Woodstock, Georgia, for a tour and tasting of unique brews that you can't find anywhere else. Reformation Brewery, set beer free. ReformationBrewery.com.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Well, I'm sure I'd feel much worse if I weren't under such heavy sedation.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to one of our great radio affiliates, KBDB HD3 96.7 FM in Forks, Washington. Catch Beer Guys Radio on KBDB every Saturday at 2 p.m. Pacific. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio studios at Ironmonger Brewing, and we're talking with DEEP Brewing Company.
Yes, we are. So I'm going to get back to DEEP in just a moment, but I do want to, we're full of shout outs this week, Brian.
Oh, so many shout outs.
But shout out to our friend and brewer, Jason Pellet at Orpheus Brewing. Brian, as you mentioned earlier, we have got a bottle of I Am Only Memories, and Jason took bronze. Orpheus Brewing took bronze for this. It is a traditional spontaneously fermented wild ale, aged 2 years in barrels and re-fermented on raspberries, and it's pretty darn amazing.
It's delicious.
So thanks for bringing this. I don't know that I got to sample this one before at the anniversary, so it's nice to have it. That's really, really good. Ryan, I wanted to ask you about your aggressive beer release schedule. Did I hear you correct? In 2 years you've released, was that 400 beers?
No, we're about 220 beers.
Okay,
only 220. So disappointed.
That's 2 a
Tim.
week,
yeah.
Which is pretty steady stuff. So, how have you been able to kind of keep up with that continuous release schedule and kind of supply demand of your core offerings?
So we kind of jumped out of the gate, like brewing on our little 20 gallon system that was our homebrew kit beforehand. And so when we first opened, it was just kind of let's brew as much as we can, just try to keep up while we're working on getting our 3.5 barrel up and running. And then by the time we got that going and we could get our core beers kind of locked down, we had already put a good number of like rotating beers on the board and kind of became known for that rotational tap list. And so we just kind of went with it. We do a fair amount of treatment beers based on our, like for instance, our Spear Pressure Golden Ale. We have probably 14 different treatments that we do to that beer. Two of which happen to be like 6-month seasonals for us. We do a coffee blonde ale off that same base, and then we do a coconut cream ale. So on top of that, when we get into the dark beers, we have a porter that we treat with pecans, and we do a bourbon barrel aged version of it. And then we're not afraid to experiment with new things. We know our system pretty well. We know our ingredients really well. And so rather than doing a small pilot these days, we just go for it, and we'll brew 7 barrels of something, and whenever it's ready to go, we just push it out. Sometimes almost every beer that we come out with, we'll do 3 or 4 different variations of as well. So it just kind of adds up after a little while.
Sure does. So I saw in an interview that you focus on flavor, and I know beer flavor is a goal for most breweries, but how do you view flavor, the approach differently from other breweries?
I don't know if I would call it differently from other breweries, as far as a lot of breweries focus a lot on the way food works together, and then trying to relate that to beer. We have a pretty good understanding for how like flavors play against each other. I would say what separates us from most breweries that play around a lot with food flavors and treatments and stuff is that we tend to be on the subtle side, and then let your mind play with it, and you can kind of take it where you want. We try not to be too aggressive on any one flavor, and then focus a lot on balance.
I imagine your comment, in that interview about the flavor, that ties a lot into, like you said, the different treatments of the beers. And I assume treatments variants is what you're talking, different flavor variants in that of your beers,
right?
Correct. So I'm assuming that's kind of where it ties in a lot, is putting those flavors out there. And you're right, a lot of breweries are quite extreme on that these days.
They definitely can be.
To try and punch it in. As a home brewer, we've entered beers that we tried to be subtle in the flavors, where it just really was a light complement to it. And we've got dinged even in homebrew that, it needed to be more intense.
Tim is still bitter about a peach saison that not enough peach.
From like 4 years ago, I still have a chip on my shoulder.
And it was a good subtle peach flavor.
But it was, like you said, Ryan, the flavors were subtle, but it was there. You didn't miss the peach. It just wasn't like you were having a bushel of peaches stuffed in your face there. So,
right.
And I personally prefer that. There's some beers that are good with an extreme flavor,
sure,
but I want to taste the beer. I want to taste the beer underneath, and I think that the flavors personally should complement that.
Now, I think if you were to put stroop-waffles in a beer, you might want that flavor to be a little bit more intense, too.
I don't know who would put stroop-waffles.
I have no idea who would do that, too.
Now, you got talking about the size you brewed on. You said you started with your 20-gallon system, right? Then up to a 3.5 barrel.
Yep.
And you just done an upgrade. Did you upgrade the brew house, or was that just tank space?
We're actually in process. So currently we're still brewing on our 3.5 barrel. We usually squeeze about 4 barrels per batch out of it. And our largest tanks that we have in the brewery right now are 20 barrels. So we're turning it 5 times to fill those guys up. And that's usually about an 18-hour day for us. Right now we're in the process of installing a 10-barrel brew house from SS Brewtech over in California. And it's a 10-barrel 3-vessel with a 4 times hot liquor tank. So it'll be a 40-barrel hot liquor tank. And that'll allow us to probably almost quintuple our total production capacity.
That's great. I mean, with a schedule like that, 18 hours, and you're turning around, a new beer every week or a couple new beers every week, you really need that. Don't you?
You need a nap, is what he needs.
He needs a nap.
That's it. So, yeah.
Sleep is hard to find around here these days.
No doubt. Yeah, absolutely.
Would you say that I'm interested in the Tallahassee craft beer scene. Would you say that the growth in your brewery kind of mirrors the growth in the Tallahassee beer scene in general? Are you making converts from regular beer?
I would. We're kind of in that. We're past the early stage. Proof Brewing, which opened up, I believe they're in their 5th year at their current location, 7 years overall, and they were kind of the impetus for the movement here. And then we had a couple more breweries open before we did, and I think Tallahassee's craft beer scene has just kind of hit its stride as we opened up. We were brewery number 4, and then we've got one more brewery opened after us about a year ago, Ology Brewing, and they're firmly planted in that sour beer, the long-term aged sours category. So we finally kind of got all the pieces and a good network where, we can share information with each other, ingredients as well. Everyone needs a cup of sugar every now and then.
Sure, absolutely.
And then our customers are, and Tallahassee beer enthusiasts as a whole, it's actually becoming a thing where Tallahassee has beer enthusiasts. So they can spend their weekend jumping, from brewery to brewery and maybe not even hit them all in town.
That's always fun to be able to get out and do that and go check around. I've actually seen, we've interacted with someone on social media. There's a group called, I think it's called Tallahassee Beer Society. Maybe that is a kind of an enthusiast group there. And they do a lot to kind of spread the word and that. And, that really helps the local beer scene to have someone who is just a cheerleader. Breweries have to promote, their stuff there. But if you've got someone who's just a cheerleader for the beer community as a whole, it can really do a lot for it. And they're great. They've shared when we've talked to Florida breweries down there and stuff, they've spread it around.
Maybe they need a Tallahassee beer Reddit, Tim.
Tallahassee, maybe they have one.
They may have one, actually. I don't know.
Quite possible that they do, though. So, but I think we do have a subreddit somewhere. I don't Reddit, but
that's it, man. That's it. That's a handy place. We talk about it here a lot on the show. We have an ATL beer Reddit, and it's a good. It's an easy place to meet, share all that information, get it out there.
It's a thriving beer community. It really is.
And occasionally get in fights and make people hate you.
Yeah.
That's, at least for me, I seem to be able to do that. So
You're good at that, Tim.
So it's a skill that I have, definitely. Well, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take another break, but we'll be back very soon to talk more with Ryan Lapete of DEEP Brewing Company.
Are you thinking about opening a brewery in the Atlanta area? If so, take a look at the Park at Georgetown. This unique community will feature a collection of restaurants, as well as a craft brewery within the new J.W. Holmes luxury development, Dunwoody Green. Conveniently located less than half a mile from I-285, this enclave of restaurants will be the gathering place in Dunwoody. Krim & Associates, the developer of the Park at Georgetown, wants to talk to you. For more information, call Todd Semrau at 404-226-6526.
Craft beer forged with a reverence for tradition and new styles that start a revolution. Ironmonger Brewing. The brewers at Ironmonger Brewing pride themselves at being masters of barrel-aged, hoppy, and sour beers. They invite you to their tap room in Marietta, Georgia to taste and see. Also visit their barrel room for an intimate drinking experience with great live entertainment. Keep up to date on all things Ironmonger by liking them on Facebook. Ironmonger Brewing, establishing a new standard in craft beer.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I believe you have my stapler.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Make sure to follow us on the socials, Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're broadcasting from the Beer Guys Radio studios at Ironmonger Brewing, and we're talking with DEEP Brewing Company. So I have a question. You have some great beer-themed art on your cans and in social media. Do you get all that work from one artist, or do you rely on several local artists? How does that work?
My assistant brewer, Clayton, he happens to be a pencil sketch artist. So half the time when he's sitting at the keg washer, just cycling through it, he's doodling. Like, for instance, we have what we call our Hoptopus. It's an octopus where the head has been turned into kind of a stylized hop hop flower, and that was one where he was sitting there sketching on a piece of paper, and I told him to take a chalk marker and draw it on the wall. And then we've got our hopfish, which is more like an angler fish that's been turned into a stylized hop as well.
I love that. I really love that.
I saw that one. That's really cool. Yeah.
And then we've got a mermaid on the wall here, whose, I guess, the scales look more like hop petals. And that was drawn by one of our former bar managers. She kind of doodled that on the wall one night, late night.
That's pretty darn cool.
So
that's some neat usage of hops and things there.
Kind of found beer art just shows up on the wall.
just a few beers late at night. I think I'm going to paint a mural. It's time to paint a mural. So it happens. So Ryan, a question for you. I was kind of curious about this. We talked about it a little bit on one of the breaks here. We were talking about distribution, and you explained that you personally do not own it, but your family also owns a distribution company. Is that correct?
So yeah, my wife and my brother partnered on distributorship.
But you mentioned that technically, according to Florida law, you could have been an owner, but only for a certain amount of years. Is that right?
Yeah. So they allow a brewery to participate as a limited partner in a startup distributorship for up to 8 years. So on that 8th year, you have to completely divest, or the brewery has to divest itself, so that the only owners left are those not associated with the brewery.
I got you. Now, does that distributor distribute for DEEP Brewing?
Yes, they distribute. We're the only brewery on the truck, but that will probably change in the near future. And they recently just announced that they are launching a wine brand from Thomasville, Georgia, Farmer's Daughter Winery.
Okay. That, and keeping the theme there, the distributor is Greater Depths. So
Greater Depths, yes.
Everything's getting so deep.
So very deep.
Man, so
layers and layers of
so
meaning.
many layers.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I'm a big fan of coffee beer, coffee in general, coffee beer, all of it together. And you've got a couple of beers coming out. I think you made reference to an entire coffee beer season at one point. Can you tell us about that?
We make a big deal out of this coffee blonde ale that we've got. We call it Chamber Goat. It's one of our signature beers in that there's not a whole lot of people doing pale coffee style beers. And we use locally roasted coffee from a roaster called Lucky Goat. They're pretty much only here in Tallahassee, although they do like mail order. And around that time, when it's October, when it's time to release that beer, we also do, because it's a single origin coffee we like to do a little experiment beforehand. So here in the tasting room, we'll have about 4 different variations of that same beer with 4 different coffees. And then we kind of select the coffee we're going to go with for the season from that experiment. We'll also we have Morning Boat, which is a beer we won a silver medal for in the coffee and chocolate beer category for best Florida beer this last year. But that's another single origin coffee from Lucky Goat. And then in our sweet stout. And then we also do some higher gravity things. We have a beer called Calypso 85, which is a espresso imperial stout. Also, we do an Irish cream ale on the other side of the new year for St. Patrick's Day called Irish Cream, which is a coffee, almond, cocoa nibs with a little bit of bourbon soaked oak.
That sounds amazing to me.
I knew once he started giving the details there, I knew you were plotting your trip to Tallahassee. Right?
I am. And I have like 23 follow-up questions about coffee varieties and which ones you're evaluating and things like that.
We should have just done a whole coffee.
We could have totally. Show. Yeah. Coffee.
If we'd mentioned this earlier in the interview, Ryan, we would have been derailed. It would have just been a total interview about coffees and coffee beer. So what is your most popular beer there at the brewery?
I would say that the beer we have to brew the most is our Reef Dweller IPA. I know it's not saying much that we have an IPA that's really popular. But yeah, that's the one we have to keep up with. But as far as the most, I guess, vehemently followed is our Octopi. It's a German chocolate style imperial stout, about 12% alcohol. It's coconut, cocoa nibs, and then my dad has a pecan grove, so we gather up some pecans once a year, and we make that beer with his pecans after we roast them.
Is there a coffee variant of that one?
There should be.
All right, let's see.
Not yet, at least. We
yet.
do a bourbon barrel aged version of it.
So Tim brought me back to coffee. I have to know. So when you're doing coffee in your beers, are you putting the beer directly onto? Are you dry coffeeing it on beans, or are you making cold brew and adding it, or is it so secret proprietary?
Oh no, we use whole bean coffee only, and usually we try to use them within about 14 days of roast, and our infusion times. We're only using it on finished beer. We're not doing like in the kettle or anything like that. Our infusion times are somewhere between 18 and 48 hours. If that's not enough coffee flavor, all right, we pull it at 48 hours no matter what, and we add more coffee.
That's a good
because you're
policy.
going to have pretty much everything you're going to get out of there by that time. So
Right.
After 48 hours, there's nothing left but astringency, Tim.
right,
Yeah.
you got all the coffee flavor you're going to get. So I saw too, Ryan, you guys have done some, the fruited Berliners, kettle sours, and that, the Florida Weiss, correct?
Yes, we have.
Those seem popular. Now, we were talking a little bit about kind of the longer term sours and the more complex, like barrel aged sours, and that. Have you played in that arena, or any intentions to go that direction?
We've played a little bit, and those projects are still in the works. We've got a collaboration we did with Farmer's Daughter, the winery up in Thomasville, that hopefully will be ready in about 2 more months. We aged about 135 gallons of that in a wine puncheon from Napa Valley, red wine puncheon. And then we've also got a long-term aged sour project that we're working on that's probably going to be the seed for a larger project that we've been aging. It's more of like a kind of a lambic style. It's the Rodenbach strain of mixed culture. So we're going to be working on that here in the near future. But right now, we're still working on getting enough space to make the beers we need for distribution.
I think we have to talk about barrel-aged narcosis. I don't believe we've brought that up, and I think that's a pretty big deal for you guys. Can you tell us about that beer?
So that is Narcosis is our annual 12% alcohol imperial stout. We use heaps of roast malt, both roasted barley and black patent malt. We use a boatload of English caramel malts as well. And then the whole base for that beer is 100% floor malted Maris Otter. And we're giving it a minimum of about 3 months in conditioning after active fermentation to kind of settle out and find its place before we even think about putting that in a keg or a bottle. And then we take that beer, once we find we've got good flavor on it and it's well aged, then we'll go ahead and throw it in bourbon barrels as well and give it a minimum of about 6 months. And we've got next year's already in barrels as well. It's going to be probably about 11 months by the time we release it.
Sounds like a winner to me, man.
Yes, it does.
Sounds like my kind of cup of tea. Excellent. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you sharing information on your brewery. So if folks want to keep up with all of the latest goings on, what is the best place for them to do that?
So we put most of our up-to-date information on Facebook. We're also active on Instagram at DEEP Brew, as well as Twitter. And then we're trying to keep our email list going strong as well.
Excellent. Thank you much. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Coming up next week, kind of a big show for us, Brian. We're going to be talking to Alan Sprentz, the founder of Portland's Hair of the Dog Brewing Company.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to that one. Remember to subscribe to Beer Guys Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcasting app. And please do leave us a review. If you really enjoy the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Our patrons get early access to all shows, exclusive content, and some very cool swag. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great week. And don't forget to drink local. Cheers.
The Beer Guys Radio Show on the Beer Guys Radio Network. BeerGuysRadio.com.